For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sean. I work on marketing, but I have a background in computer science information architecture. I focus on early stage B2B AI ventures. And my first startup, I created a graph neural net back in 2008 to do friend recommendations on Twitter, back when it was called Twitter and it had an API that you could actually do cool stuff with. Those days are gone. I've been looking at the machine learning world and AI, the changing definition of AI over the last 15 years, and really paying attention to it for obvious reasons. Over the last couple of years, AI is exploding, and that's like pretty much all consuming at this point. So, Barry, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Barry, everybody. If you haven't met me before, I'm also a Seattle, Washington person. I'm a fractional chief digital officer and a tech entrepreneur by birth. So I have been doing innovation work since the beginning of my career, everything from job boards to high-tech medical appliances. Currently, I basically work on AI projects. So I have between 6 to 12 different AI companies that I work with, ranging from very basic marketing items all the way up to medical compliance. I wear the weird technical hat, but I also bring the innovation side. So I do cybersecurity on one end of the spectrum and get into the deep, dark details of privacy and compliance. But I also bring the how does this affect humanity and move things forward for the community. I love startups. I've touched a couple hundred of them over my career. I work with a couple communities here in the Northwest in the Seattle ecosystem around Microsoft and Amazon. And I love working with entrepreneurs. So I basically adopted this entire process of AI and data as it evolved with technology, with everything from search optimization to market intelligence, and got further and further into it. I launched an AI community right before the pandemic, which was acquired. So I was a fairly early person into the wave, but there's a lot out there to learn. And I'm here to help other people, regardless of where you're at, get to the next step and understand how to use these tools for doing something cool and hopefully world changing for not just the whole community, but your family, your friends, and your network.
That was very inspirational. Thank you, Barry. I feel inspired. Everybody feel inspired? The summary of that is we're nerds. We're AI nerds. We spend our weekends reading the new research papers, and that's what we do for fun. So we're here we just want to talk to anybody about AI that's willing to listen to us because that's all we want to talk about. So thanks for being here, everybody. And today, this session is brought to you by Promptimize. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with who that is, but they're Grammarly for AI prompts. So it's a Chrome extension that allows you to one-click enhance your prompts for better output. It also has a prompt library feature, which is great for saving your prompts and reusing them. And even better, it has a variable system. So you can take those prompts and dynamically input all of your content. So you want to put your brand voice for different brands in there, or you want to have different personas saved as variables. It does all of that. And somebody just asked where I am. I am in Seattle as well. I'm actually technically Barry's not in Seattle. He's in the boonies north of Seattle. And I am in Redmond across the water from Seattle in the home of Microsoft. And then John, what is the tool? It's promptimizeai.com. So go check it out. There are going to be some exciting new feature releases coming down the pipeline. So stay tuned over the coming weeks. It should be exciting. It's a great tool. We're working closely. We will be using it today. But the goal of this is to get into prompts. So what we're going to talk about today is prompt flows. All right. So getting away from one-off prompts and really getting into using prompts that feed into each other and making it better by having multiple steps, breaking down your workflows into the key pieces. This is where we see people when they just start out and they're trying out the AI tools. It's great. They're putting in a request, write this email for me. And that's a good start. But most of the gains happen when you start having an actual chain of prompts together. And I'm going to walk you through some actual examples that we use. This can be applied to pretty much anything. So I'm going to walk you through a content generation example because that's low hanging fruit. It's easy, it makes sense, but you can apply this to business strategy. You can apply this to management. You can apply this to financial analysis, market analysis. Like this applies to any sort of knowledge work. So it's really important to understand this concept and take it to the next level and understand how it all interacts. Barry, is there anything you want to add to that before we jump in?
I would just add that it's all about customizing and personalizing it for yourself. Constantly be asking yourself the question of submitting a piece of information. If you're using ChatGPT, grab your LinkedIn resume or your Word version of it and you submit that into the system and constantly think of a way to query whatever this general idea, like this example that you're going to go through. Ask the system, how do I customize this for me?
Yeah, so really get meta, right? Make use the AI to do your work. And what I mean by that is people start with going in and saying, "What do this thing for me?" But before you do that, ask it, how would you go about doing this thing? Right? Ask it to tell you what the process should be, and you might be surprised at the output. There's a lot of you in here that say you're a level 3 and above, and that's great. But there's a bunch of you in here that say you're also a level 1. So I'm going to spend just a couple minutes, really quick, going over some really basic things. So let me share my screen here. So the first step, right, is deciding what LLM you actually want to use. We're not going to spend a ton of time going through all this because there's so many resources out there. You can go ask ChatGPT which LLM you should use and walk through it. So I won't do it a ton, but I'll just give the quick overview. So Barry and I, we use pretty much all of them because they're all good at different things. And so we're constantly taking the output from one and feeding it into another. And part of that is because we're always just testing where's the frontier, where's the edge, who's in the lead. Gemini is a great one. Huge context window, really good at listening to frameworks that you give it and actually sticking to it, pulling data out. The deep research functionality in Gemini is great, especially since it got upgraded to 2.5. It's extremely useful and very affordable as well. So we love using this for those kinds of things. ChatGPT, that's the one everybody knows. They have a ton of models that are confusing to keep up with. It's a really good go-to. If you just want a default option, ChatGPT tends to be it. It is constantly changing because they're releasing new models, but it's pretty good at most things. One of the nice things is you can do custom GPTs, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Then there's Claude. Claude is one of my defaults for a lot of things. Claude is one of the best programmers out there, but Claude is also one of the best writers. ChatGPT has gotten a lot better at writing, but Claude still edges it out on just feeling humanistic. It feels much nicer. And it has this really cool feature where you can create your own custom writing styles. You can train them on different pieces of content. So it's really good at mimicking those different things. So if you have a favorite writer, you can add a couple different pieces in and it'll sound a lot like them. I love Claude. Then for the more advanced users, the Google AI Studio is fantastic. I don't recommend this to beginner people, but for people that are 3 and higher, Google AI Studio, Barry and I live in this thing because this allows you to control the system prompts. It allows you to quickly experiment with structured output, controlling the output length. You can control all these different parameters in here. There's a bunch of other tools that allow you to do this across different LLMs using the API, but that's getting a lot more advanced. And then I also just wanted to shout out to Perplexity. If you don't use Perplexity, please, for the love of God, start using Perplexity. It's fantastic. I use it 20 times a day. Anytime I have a question, I'm asking it I'm putting it into Perplexity and having it generate a report. Their deep research reports are excellent. There's an edge for the really expensive ChatGPT plan, or Gemini's new version of deep research is quite good. But I find Perplexity to be very consistent, very steerable, and it does a great job of going out, searching a ton of different data sources, and then creating a report about it. So make it a reflex. Anytime you have a question, start using Perplexity. What's really cool is you can export those reports to Markdown or PDF, and then you can put those into other LLM requests as context. So that's something we're going to talk about is breaking down and understanding context and workflows. So let's get into the meat of this. What I'm going to show you is a workflow that we created for generating podcast episode promo scripts. So we have a workflow. We take an episode, we take the transcript, and we want to generate YouTube shorts. So they're like 60-second promos that are highlighting some of the content that got discussed in there. And this, I think, is a good example of how to actually break down the flow. The hardest part of this is not the prompt engineering, although there's a bunch of details that go into that. It's not actually using the LLM, although there are details that go into that. What I have found is the hardest for people is actually breaking down their workflows. It's really surprisingly difficult for people to break down what they do naturally into steps. Some of you on this call may be good at that. And that's a superpower. Like, you should know you're good at that, and you should spend time at your company helping other people break that down, because a lot of people just can't think through that. Barry, you've spent a lot of time over your career breaking down workflows. Do you have any thoughts around this? Because I think this is beyond AI. This is more of a, do you understand processes and operations?
Yeah, really, the catch there is just to break it down to the most simple steps for folks. And when you're trying to do it for yourself, just understand what your key goal and what your outcome is going to be. And regardless of the response, as you go through what's your goal and the process of that, achieving that goal, when you achieve it, what do you want next? A lot of times people get wrapped around the axle with prompting and generating responses, and once they have the result, they don't know what that's going to do next. So don't just write out the process and say, my goal is to get to the end of this prompt. I don't want to, in this case, I don't want just a summary or a podcast promotion. I want to achieve the next step, the next step. And the further you can think that out and just bullet it out, the better you can also import all that information to your prompt structure, so that as it's generating something as simple as a podcast promotion piece, if it actually understands that there's 2 or 3 or 10 steps behind it, the better you get at putting that into documentation and telling the system that's actually the process and the journey that you're about to take, the better step 1 becomes, the better step 2 becomes, the better step 3 becomes.
Yep, exactly. All right. I'm gonna give you an example here of, here's how like a level 1 user might use it. They might say, generate an awesome promo script for a podcast episode that'll be used for YouTube shorts. And also ProMove right there. I use Whisperflow. It's a phenomenal app. If you don't use it, it's really popular among software engineers, but you just hold down like the function key on Mac and you can talk into your computer, and it does a really good job of transcribing what you're saying. There's a bunch of services that do that, but Whisperflow is really good at actually like detecting your intent. So if you start talking and then you back up and reword your sentence, it's not going to transcribe all of that. It'll just go back and redo your sentence. So really handy. Whisperflow is the name of that. So highly recommend that if you haven't checked it out. So I'm just going to throw that simple prompt into Claude, and we're going to see what happens here. So it's going to think about it. It's going to take it. It's going to look at the document. And this is an interview that I did with a fractional CFO. He's awesome. Okay, it generated a single script. Sometimes when I've done this one, it generates a couple. So it wants to know what VCs are really looking for before they write checks. People are kicking themselves right now. So this, if you're not in the world of content marketing, you may not recognize it right away, but this is a very generic output. This is not, there's probably a million pieces of content that are like framed exactly like this. This is not likely to do very well. What this is missing here is this is a very simple prompt. Obviously, we could make this more robust and you'll get better output. I don't want to, some things do just need one single prompt and you can do well. But here's what we do. in order to create stability in the output and far greater output, we have a sequence. Most of our sequences, when it comes to content, it all starts with the audience profile, right? That's key. If you don't understand the audience profile, you're not going to understand what kind of content they actually want to read and interact with, right? So our first prompt here is we have this prompt, which we call the audience profile prompt. So I won't read through this whole thing word by word because it'll take us forever to get through it. But we can absolutely dive into this more later if people have questions. But the overview of it is it's asking it to make an audience profile based on a transcript. It walks it through the process of doing an initial analysis, content analysis. Then it does a classification and audience signals. Then it has interest mapping, and it also goes into doing a sophistication score. So like, how complicated is this content? Because we want to be able to use it across all kinds of different topics for the podcast. So I'm going to drag the transcript in, attach that transcript here, and then I'm going to hit go. So this is the first step in our prompt flow, is start by giving it context about the people that it's going to be talking to. And Barry will talk a little bit more later about personas and like how to think about that and how to structure those. So it's identified that, okay, financial leaders and growth stage business executives, that's who this episode is for. It's fractional CFOs. It grades their knowledge level and experience. So they probably need 5+ years of business experience to really connect with this episode, because that's the level of content that it gets into. And so it generates this whole report. So now this whole report, all on its own, that's already useful. Like, you can give that to your marketing people and say, go run with this, use this as your persona. But we're actually going to continue the conversation now. All right, we have an audience analysis. So based on that audience analysis, let's do a content topic analysis, right? So we'll do this. Again, it does an in-depth content topic analysis. So it does a content review. It does primary topic extraction, supporting topic. How are they related? How significant is the topic? Like, how much time did they spend in this episode talking about it? What's the depth they go through? Like, it really goes through all these different pieces to try and understand, all right, spend time analyzing this transcript, break it up into chunks. And what you'll notice is this is actually how a good marketer would interact naturally with the transcript. This is what they're thinking about intuitively, of who's my audience? What do they care about? What's actually in here? You're breaking down the process into steps. So you can see here that, okay, primary topics, it's the role of a CFO, fundraising strategy, the current market conditions, that's a timely type of thing, strategic growth approaches. So it goes through and it lists a bunch of great topics that it's pulling right out of the transcript. Now, here's a piece that is really simple, but surprisingly, people forget to use it all the time, is it just did an analysis. It just pulled out four primary topics, five primary topics is what it pulled out. Go ahead and just ask it to take another pass. Don't repeat any of them. Just do a deeper dive. Like, literally just ask it like you would a junior employee or an intern. Say, are you sure you got everything? Are you confident in your answer right now? Please take another pass and just do it again. And what you'll find is the LLM will start going deeper. It's really stupid simple. And a lot of advanced users already know this, but it's a good reminder that it will go deeper and find more. Now, there's a limit on how many times you want to do this, because if you ask it 50 times, it is going to give you 50 answers, and it will probably start hallucinating and going crazy. So use with caution. Don't do it too many times. Okay, so we've done an audience analysis. We've done a topic analysis. All right, for every one of those topics, let's do a quote selection. Let's pull out quotes from this transcript. So once we have this, we've got this prompt that we've created. Again, it has a bunch of instructions. What is it looking for? It's giving it really good guidelines of what makes a good quote. What's the context of it? How do you validate it? How do you verify that you didn't just make this quote up? You actually pulled it out of here. And for every one of those topics, go ahead and pull out a quote. So now it's going through and okay, so CFO role and function. That was one of the primary topics, right? Here it's pulled out a quote with an actual timestamp of where that is in the clip. And it's going to go through all of these and give us a nice, strong list of quotes. Again, you can take all this and give it to your marketing person right now and just say like, all right, go make content about this. It's that alone again is useful. This content would have taken a solid hour of reading through the transcript and pulling all of this out. So I'd say so far we're about an hour of work that we've done in the past 5 minutes, 10 minutes that I've been rambling on explaining all of this. Usually when one of our workflows runs, this is running for less than 5 minutes from end to end. And we're only partway through right now. It's a massive time saver, but it's also much more reliable. That's what we're building here is stability in the output. So when you're building flows, what you have to think about is how consistent is the output from the LLM? Because when you're doing one-off prompts and it goes off the rails, it's easy to fix. You just say, just open a new chat window and start over, and it'll probably be fine. But when you're running flows, if one of those steps goes off the rails, it throws off all of the following steps, and you go really deep into the dark abyss of LLMs. And so you really have to think about that stability. So it's done quotes. So what we've accomplished here is we've really given the LLM a lot of context. So it now knows deeply what is this content, what's important, what is not. So at this point, we're not going to just start writing scripts. We're going to start by doing the hooks. In YouTube Shorts, the first like couple of seconds, it's the most important thing. That's when people decide if they're going to skip or not. So we're going to take that part of the process out and break it into 2 steps. We're not going to write the whole script. We're just going to write the hook, the really important hook for every one of those topics. Again, so this prompt it gives a bunch of examples of like structure, which is a very common prompt engineering practice, is give it examples so that it can analyze those and then go through. And so we spent the time building out a bunch of samples, a bunch of structures. What are the different kind of things? So in here, you can see that we call here, let me find a good one. So we're telling it how to adapt to different platforms, what works on what different ones, best practices. We give it frameworks it can choose from. So the hidden insight framework, which gives it an example, versus the myth busting approach. So these are all content types we've seen work really well, and saying, here's the choices you can make, you choose. And so we let that run, and it's going to go through and it's going to write just a list of hooks. And so already earlier, we had this one little thing made, which want to know what VCs are really looking for when they write checks. So that's a hook. It's not a very good hook, but it's a hook. So here now we've got tons of choices for different hooks. And what this means, it's either we can choose which ones we want, or now we have a ton of different potential options. We can run them all. Let's do all of them. Let's test them all. We now have weeks worth of content, and it's using all kinds of different hook formulas. It's trying out different things. So depending on the type of tone you want to go with, you have options now. And that's what's important. So the last part, and then we'll wrap up this kind of phase here, is obviously we want to write the full scripts. We're having it write them as 2 audience members talking to each other. This is, again, I won't go through the mega prompt here, but we finally end up here with multiple scripts, and it's going to go through. It's saying what hook concept it's using, what topic is it part of, and it creates a script, speaker 1, speaker 2. There's a tool out there where we can upload this script and it'll be voiced by AI. It's really good. And it'll go through multiple scripts. And again, obviously, we've got a ton of different hook options. So we can absolutely ask it to please generate 6 more scripts and hit go, and it's just going to keep going. So we can generate as many scripts as we want out of this, and it'll just work its way through all the hooks, and then you can start running and doing these tests. So what's really great to recap, is that the stability of this output. I know when I run this process that I'm going to get scripts structured exactly like this, and they're going to be a certain quality bar every single time. And we've actually run tests with these. We've actually put them out there and they perform very well. And so there's a feedback loop. We can take what performed well in the market, feed it back into the prompts, and this becomes this self-fulfilling cycle. And this is the end goal, is that once you break down your workflow and you create prompts that are stable for each step, now you can actually automate it. So you can actually, we have a Python script that runs all of these automatically. Or you can use one of the no-code platforms. There's a bunch of them out there now, N8N and MindStudio and even Zapier. Run these, use these low-code platforms, throw your prompts in there. And what you can do, and this is, I just helped a friend who has an agency. We set it up so that they have 2 Google Drive folders. One is a watch folder. When you put a Google Doc into that folder, it automatically triggers the workflow. And in another folder, the output folder, they get a new Google Doc that has all the content generated for them. So literally all that they have to do is, they don't even have to know how to use AI. All they have to do is know how to put content into a Google Doc and then copy it into a specific folder. And then the AI does all the rest of the work. And that's where the magic really starts to happen, is you can start enabling team members, whether it's at your business, in your team, or even if it's just for you, you don't even have to be good at AI, because all that work can just be done in the background. That's the dream state. So I just spent a bunch of time talking. I'm going to stop and let Barry talk for a minute.
I don't want to talk. I like listening to you.
I bet.
It's
My
very
melodious
informative
voice.
and you walk through things fairly well. If anybody has any questions about the process that Sean just went over, make sure you're sticking it in the window or raising your hand. We can unmute you or allow you to unmute. So one of the primary questions that we always think about when we're going through this prompt process is, what is that feedback loop look like? And the feedback loop for me, and also touches on the concept of, what's that purpose and intent? When we go into a project, we're always thinking about what that goal is going to be and what the follow-up process and journey is going to look like. And I find when I'm working with a lot of teams and individuals with AI, the thing that they fall flat on most of the times, they throw themselves on the sword, is the fact that they don't think of the personas that and the hats that they're going to wear. On an individual level, a lot of us, we have things that we love to do and things that we hate to do. And we constantly go into the systems trying to accomplish the things that we love to do. And then we come into conflict with the system because it's not just perfect. Sean might critique something because he's a very experienced marketer. So his bar for grading all this marketing content that comes out is quite high. And then there's a variety of things he doesn't like to do. And so when we're thinking about the concept of personas and what we do and do not like to do, there's individual personas and those individual hats that, if you think of the things that you like to do, the hats that you wear, maybe you're an analytical mindset, or maybe you're a marketer, or you hate doing the admin work, jot those down, because the fastest way to get some of these tools to work better for you and fill in the gaps to your own workload is to ideate and detail those 3 to 15 different hats that you wear on a weekly basis, and then create a persona for it. It's actually referring to you, but it's that segment of your personality and behavior. Some of the things are going to be very assistive, that are focused on the things that you love, but some of those personas and those hats that you wear are going to be assisting you on the things that you hate. And in a lot of times, the things that you don't like, typically the things that the AI can fill in some of the gaps the best, because you don't want to do it. And so it's forcing you to go through the steps like a good gym coach, rather than you taking the initiative and doing it because you're in love with that topic. And if you think of that concept at the same time, as you mature through the process of coming up with your own multiple hats and multiple personas for yourself, you can start applying that to a team concept for the individuals that you work with. So for every single person on your team, you can create a little persona for every single person or every client that you have, and create that as part of the process and the information that's going into the system. And you can actually become the wizard at that point, because that persona for the team members can help you solve their problems. So the things that they don't like to do, if you're knowledgeable and you're getting feedback from an AI tool set properly, as you engage with those other team members, you can also fulfill the things that are stopping them and preventing them causing obstacles. And you can give them helpful hints, you can educate them, you can help make them better at their own job. Typically, when you do that uplifting of other people, there's a general consensus that people like help and assistance. And you can do all that with AI. So one of the booklets that I have in my LinkedIn profile is actually about a system called the six thinking hat system. And it takes the whole core concept from a blue hat, a green hat, a red hat. It uses colors, and at the default, it starts off with the concept of each one of those colors represents something like being analytical or being innovative. You can start with that framework, and I'll stick a link in when I'm done speaking about it. I will pop it up really quick on a screen share just so you guys can see the basic outline of what elements we're talking about for a blue hat, a green hat, yellow, black, white. You could have an infinite number of colors on the rainbow, and each one of those colors represents some need or some goal that you're trying to accomplish. If you go to that LinkedIn profile or check your email when we're done, you can see the actual full version of this prompt. And as you're working through your own prompt, you simply throw this multi-user prompt on top of it, and it will give you a perspective based upon these six thinking hats. So use this one a couple times, understand what the different perspectives are of whatever goal you're trying to accomplish with AI, and then take the time to think about your own six thinking hats. Personalize this for yourself. What are your six different chores or hats that you wear? And if you have the wherewithal to move to the next step, do that for somebody on your team or somebody that you want to help out. And you'll find that as you're going through this journey process with your prompt framework, it is detailing things that either you forgot to do or that you didn't know you needed to do. And you will slowly mature and get a more sophisticated framework because you're bringing other perspectives that you didn't think about.
And I want to, this is a great idea for next time, Barry, is I think you need to make Zoom filters. So when you're critiquing ideas, it automatically adds the colored hat onto your video so that we can see
Absolutely.
when you're being the strategist versus when you're being the black hat guy. I think that'd be really helpful.
Well, you can get as extreme as you want to with those thinking hats. So those are just the basic ones. You can have a real critical hat. You can have a complaint hat if you're in customer service or product development. Write up what an extreme bad client looks like. Grab that social media post that's like lighting you on fire and stick that in as one of these personas that is being applied to your framework. And then keep that in your copy. Use a tool like Promptomize to copy that prompt and just have it ready to go when you're working through one of the LLMs.
Yeah, and we just had a question, Barry, on this. What would it look like to implement this from a GPT standpoint, like an extended prompt from different POVs or a custom trained GPT with a specific embedded persona?
Yeah, so there's two ways that you can do this type of thing. I provide the full prompt in the document, so you can just copy and paste the full prompt. So as you're working through another process in GPT, you can just stick that in as an additional prompt saying, here's the topic that I'm currently working on, apply this problem solving system to it. Or you can go in and create a custom GPT and upload this template. I provide that same template framework for a custom GPT. And then whenever you're going through your prompting on Chat GPT, you just activate the custom GPT by going into the GPT and starting your prompt, the whole prompt process in that. And you can do that process. You can create either a custom GPT so that it's always active. And that's just your go-to whenever you want to activate your individual persona, or whenever you want to activate your team engagement persona, you hop into that custom GPT. Or if you're a Gemini user, you can create a Gemini gem and achieve the same process.
Right. So just want to reiterate, if anybody has questions, feel free to throw them in chat or raise your hand. We're happy to unmute you. We've got another 15 minutes here today. We will host more of these and happy to go deep on different topics. Barry and I, there's a number of familiar faces in here for our weekly office hours as well, where we nerd out about AI. Keep an eye out for more, but please feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. We're happy to go into the more details. And somebody asked, or Vincent, you asked, what are we using for the AI voice as well? And that's something that we've spent a lot of time at the Voice Frontier. We're actually co-founding an AI voice focused lab. So that's something we're really focused on. But right now, so Play AI, if you have a script between two speakers, Play AI is an amazing tool because you can just upload the script and it auto separates the two speakers and generates a very conversational back and forth like Notebook LM, except you can provide the exact script for it to read. But we've also been working on implementing the ability to use HUNE, which has their latest model is just like insane. With that one, you have to build a little bit more scripting on the back end to separate the two speakers or the multiple speakers into separate threads and then feed them in individually, and then use something like FFmpeg to automatically stitch them back into one file. So there's a little bit more work with that, but you also have complete control over what the voice sounds like because they generate voices from prompts. So really cool stuff there. If people want to play around with that sort of thing, I highly recommend it. Somebody earlier, I think I saw, was also asking about the markdown, the hashtags, which was explained in the chat, but just in case people didn't see it, all of those prompts that I was showing you is using Markdown, which is just a formatting language. It's very simple to learn, and I highly recommend you do because it gives you a lot of options. Being able to basically say, this is an important title, or this is bold. You can add structure to the prompts that you're giving, but also a lot of these tools can output Markdown. And what's really nice, so like Gemini, when it creates a deep research report, or Perplexity, you can export Markdown, and you can then take that, and if you copy and paste that into Google Docs as Markdown, it'll automatically format it in your template and make that conversion. But you can also bring that over. If you do a deep research report in Perplexity, bring it over to Claude, paste it in as context. It'll be able to parse through that Markdown and have a better understanding of what it is. And again, it's very simple. It's not rocket science. It's not like coding or something. It's just, you just have to know what the symbols mean. So I do recommend people learn that. Yeah. All right. There's another question here. Would you explain using MyGPT and sharing it with a team? And you're the only one using this right in the company right now. Yeah. So driving team adoption is tough. It's really hard. I'd say that's probably the biggest barrier to entry right now, is just getting people to start using it. And right now, I think only 17% of the US population uses AI on a daily basis. So that's like a big number when you think about how quickly that happened, but it's also a tiny number when you think about how powerful this is and how much it should apply to everyone. So the first step is like really getting people to understand that this is a habit. Like that really, this is not an AI thing. It's a human quirk of getting them to change their habits is a hard thing. That's half of what marketing is about. It's just like getting people to develop new habits. So you need to figure out how the person that you're trying to target, how to get them to start reflexively turning to AI for everything. And sometimes it's as simple as every chance you get, ask them, did you put this into the AI? If they send you a question, say, did you ask my custom GPT before you sent me this question? Because my custom GPT would have answered that for you. And being a dick, like being like annoying about it and like really just harping on it. Send out the Shopify memo. Exactly. If you haven't read the Shopify memo, Toby said, you better use AI or you're out. Like that is how this org is going to run. And
And
that's
I would also add that there's two basic questions you can get team adoption, because one of the things that really locks people up in getting any type of AI adopted is they just don't believe it works. So ask,
yeah,
like, what are the 2 or 3 things that they hate doing? Just write down a list for your team member. Get those 2 or 3 things that they hate doing, and then ask them if there's 2 or 3 things that they think is impossible to do with AI. And take that list one day and just sit down at Chat GPT and plug those 3 to 6 things in. And then next Monday, go back to them and say, yeah, like I did this. Like one of these items, you don't have to do all of them. And in fact, if they give you a couple items that are impossible, they say are impossible to do with AI, they probably are. But there's usually one in there where you can sit down and have a cup of coffee with them and say, this thing that you hate doing, or this thing that you thought was impossible, that would be like a huge win for us. Oh yeah, I did that in 10 minutes. And as a believer, as somebody who already uses the tool, you're willing to sit down and spend that half hour of time to actually accomplish that goal. They won't do it because they don't believe it. It's a very cultural and community driven impact that you have to get over that first level of disbelief.
yep. And that's so like that habit and that belief of what it can actually do, that's the biggest hurdle, right? Like you got to get over that. And that's a human problem. And you got to get over that. Once you get over it, there are a series of other challenges of not everybody's going to become an expert prompt engineer. Not everybody knows how to break down their process. So you do have to provide tools for that, not to toot our Promptimize horn too much. But like one of the things that we're getting in response to Promptimize is that it is making it easier for people to adopt it for a couple of reasons. One being you can save prompts that are already engineered and give that to the team, right? They don't have to be prompt engineers. You just give them the ones that have already been engineered. So it's easy for them to say, like, when I need to do this, I just do these 4 prompts in that flow and like just do it. So a lot of companies, once you reach a certain size, you have a knowledge repository. Start a shared knowledge repository that has the prompts you guys have found that work for different tasks so that they can actually go in and use it. Like you have to start a culture of sharing this knowledge with your team, because most people are not like some of us. Some of us on this call are AI nerds, and like we think about it all the time, like all the time. Most people don't care that much. They're not excited about tools. They're just trying to get their job done. And so make it easy for them to get their job done with AI. That's really what it comes down to. Did you want to add something, Barry?
No, I was just looking at some
Okay.
of the questions. We've got a couple more questions in there about it. Looks like
Oh yeah.
Promptimize features and explaining variables. And
Yeah. And I see there's some responses kicking off on the question about energy and water consumed by AI. That's a topic we might that's a very office hours type of topic. I'm not going to get too much into that there, but definitely happy to talk a lot about that. The somebody also asked about Clay, which is a great tool. We've used Clay extensively. We actually ran a workshop like a year ago now on a Clay AI combo workflow, and it's great. It's really great. You can Clay, we treat it as a great place to quickly experiment, but there's ways to do things at scale much cheaper outside of Clay. You can recreate a lot of that if you have the know-how. There's also something that's really fun is you can now, like literally as of this week, Gemini announced that you can use Gemini prompts in Google Sheets as a formula. So what this enables is you can do automated, like when this cell, take this cell, process it in a prompt, output it here. And that's a lot of what Clay enables. It makes it easy to do. So if you can get your data into a Google Sheet, you can do a lot of cool stuff with Gemini through that. We've been doing that type of thing for like over a year or two now with a Chrome extension that allows you to do that. But that was more expensive and more janky. So this is like a much better integration now. So I do recommend playing around with that. And then the question about variables and Promptimize, we can send out more info about that. We're working on some resources that work through all those kind of thing and walk you through a little bit more clearly. But it's essentially like you put a little curly brace around a variable, and then you can save values for those variables within the interface. So anytime you put those variables into your prompt, it'll pop up and you can basically choose what do you want to fill it with. If you have a variable that says persona in your prompt, and that way you can save 6 different personas. And so maybe you have a podcast promo script generator and it has a variable for persona. And so you can go say, I want to make the script for our sales persona. And it'll automatically fill that variable into that prompt. So that's like the basics of how that works. But what's really cool is you actually should think about variables even outside of this tool, like in your prompts. You can set up variable structures in your prompts that tell the LLM to select different variables and fill them in and make quite complex prompts that way. And you might be surprised at the quality of output that comes from that. And then let's see what else we got here. Yeah, so there's a question here about using Claude with the specific voice, then moving to other AI tool for prompt use, output to output. I'll walk through that a little bit more. So the podcast promo script, as an example, usually I don't actually do that entire workflow in Claude. The first half of that workflow, doing the audience analysis and the content analysis, I usually do that in Gemini because Gemini is better at analyzing really large context windows and pulling out really structured information. So I usually do that analysis in Gemini, and it does a really good, really structured approach to it. It's very thorough. And then my final prompt for that part of the process is I ask it to compile all of that into a report. And so what it does is it takes all those steps, puts it into one giant report in Markdown, which I then take that report out, put it, and I have it go into a Google Doc. So I can provide that to clients and say, here's a report about your episode. And that's actually really useful for sponsors and for other pieces of content. But once you have that report, you take the Markdown and put that into Claude as context. So then I'll use Claude for the actual script writing, and I've provided all that output to it. And so Claude doesn't have to do the actual processing of the script. It can just look at, okay, here's the audience I need to target. Here's the different content topics that I need to address. And it simplifies it for Claude. So highly recommend. Once you're comfortable with that, just getting the AI to write reports for you makes it very portable. We are at the top of the hour here. I appreciate everybody showing up. So we will provide this recording to everybody, and feel free to share it with anybody that you think this will be valuable for. Also, I'll put my LinkedIn link in the chat. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to connect. We're always happy to chat more. We will be hosting more of these in the future. Please send us requests. Like, what topics do you want covered? We're doing this for you. We want to be useful and helpful and understand what your guys' problems are. There will be a survey that comes out. Please rate this. If you thought it was boring, if you thought it was exciting, if you thought it was somewhere in between, please tell us. Like, all that feedback really is helpful. Let us know. And yeah, everybody who's here, we'll notify you via Luma. You're all on the list. So we'll let you know for future ones. Or if you hated the sound of our voice, feel free to unsubscribe. I will take it personally, but I'll just cry myself to sleep and then I'll be fine tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you all being here, and I hope to see you all next time. Barry, anything from you?
No, just throwing out the invite to connect with anyone as well. Any questions? If you check out some of the guides, want a variation of some prompt inputs, just drop me a quick note on LinkedIn or via email, and happy to touch base.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye.